A woman hiking alone near a remote river hears desperate splashing. As she rushes to investigate, her heart stops. A tiny grizzly bear cub is struggling against the raging currents, barely keeping its head above water. Without thinking, she throws herself into the freezing river to save it. But what happens next is something no one could have expected. Stay with us as we reveal an unforgettable story of courage, survival, and an unbreakable bond between a woman and the wild. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. This helps us bring more inspiring stories like this to you. Emma Hayes had always found solace in the wilderness, the mountains, the crisp air, the endless expanse of untouched nature. It was the one place where she felt truly free. She had been coming to the forests of Montana for years, spending weeks alone photographing wildlife and documenting her experiences. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to witness. The morning had been calm, the sun casting golden light over the trees as Emma followed a winding trail along the river. The rushing water was loud, but as she stopped to adjust her camera lens, she heard something that sent a chill down her spine, a cry, high-pitched, frantic, and desperate. Her heart pounded as she scanned the river. Then she saw it, a tiny grizzly bear cub, no more than a few months old, was being swept away by the powerful current. Its tiny paws flailed, its mouth opened in silent screams, but the water was too strong. Emma's mind raced. Where was its mother? Why was it alone? But there was no time to think. The cub was sinking. Without hesitation, she dropped her backpack and ran toward the riverbank. Emma didn't think, she just acted. The water was freezing, an icy shock that stole her breath as she dove in. The river was deeper than she expected, the current stronger, but she forced her body forward, pushing through the waves toward the tiny creature. The cub was barely keeping its head above water, its panicked eyes locking onto hers. It was exhausted. It wouldn't last much longer. Hold on. Emma gasped, reaching out. With one final push, she grabbed the cub, pulling its tiny, shivering body against her chest. It clung to her instinctively, its tiny claws digging into her jacket. But the current wasn't done with them yet. The river pulled at them, dragging them downstream. Emma struggled to keep her head above water, kicking desperately against the force trying to take them both under. She turned her body, shielding the cub from the worst of the current. The weight of her soaked clothes, the strength of the river, it was almost too much. But then, through the spray of water, she saw a fallen tree jutting out from the riverbank. A chance. Summoning every last bit of strength, she kicked hard and reached out. Her fingers barely caught the rough bark, but it was enough. She pulled herself and the cub closer, her body screaming in protest. With one last desperate effort, she dragged them both onto the log, coughing and gasping for air. The cub trembled violently in her arms, letting out a soft, pitiful whimper. Emma pulled it close, trying to shield it from the wind. "We're okay," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if that was true. "We're okay." But as she looked around, she realized their fight wasn't over yet. They were stranded in the middle of the river, the raging waters surrounding them on all sides. And then, from the trees beyond the riverbank, she heard something that made her blood run cold, a deep, guttural growl. The cub wasn't alone. Its mother had found them. The deep growl sent a shiver down Emma's spine. She turned her head slowly, her body still shaking from the freezing water. On the riverbank, partially hidden behind the trees, stood a massive grizzly bear, the mother. Her fur was thick and matted from the harsh wilderness, her muscles rippling beneath her coat. Her amber eyes were locked onto Emma, not with curiosity, but with something much more dangerous. Primal. Protective. Emma's heart pounded. The cub in her arms let out a tiny whimper, its shivering body pressed tightly against her soaked jacket. The mother bear let out another low, rumbling growl, taking a step forward, her claws digging into the earth. She thinks I'm a threat, Emma's instincts screamed at her to move, but there was nowhere to go. She was trapped, a human alone on a fallen tree, clutching a bear cub while its mother was staring her down from the riverbank. One wrong move and this could end in disaster. Emma knew the worst thing she could do was panic. No sudden movements, no threats, no eye contact. Slowly, she loosened her grip on the cub, her hands trembling as she gently placed it on the log beside her. It hesitated, looking at her with wide, trusting eyes. "Go," Emma whispered. But the cub didn't move. The mother bear let out a deep, warning huff, stepping closer to the water's edge. Her ears flattened slightly, her posture tense. Emma swallowed hard. If the cub didn't go to her mother soon, things could turn dangerous. Then, finally, the little cub let out a tiny cry and took a wobbly step toward the edge of the log. The moment it moved, the mother's body relaxed, just slightly. She let out a deep, gruff exhale, her growl softening as the cub whimpered again. Emma held her breath as the cub slid off the log into the shallows, stumbling toward its mother. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Then, in a single sweeping motion, the mother bear scooped the cub up with her massive paw, pulling it close to her chest. Emma let out a shaky breath. It was safe. But she wasn't. The mother bear lifted her head, locking eyes with Emma once again. There was no mistaking the tension in the air. Emma had saved her cub, but would the bear recognize that, or would she see Emma as an intruder? Someone who had taken what was hers? The massive grizzly let out another deep huff, shaking the water from her fur. The cub clung to her, its tiny claws gripping her thick coat. Emma's body was frozen, not from the cold, but from the sheer uncertainty of what would happen next. Then something unexpected happened. The mother bear lowered her head slightly. Her breathing slowed. And in that moment, Emma swore she saw something in her eyes, recognition. Understanding. A silent acknowledgement. For the first time, Emma wasn't just another human to this bear. She was the one who had saved her child. The bear took a step back, never breaking eye contact. Another step, then she turned. With the cub still pressed against her chest, she disappeared into the trees, her massive form vanishing into the snowy wilderness. Emma sat there, shaking, her breath coming in short gasps. She had just survived a moment that could have killed her. But she had also witnessed something incredible, a moment of trust between a human and a creature of the wild. And she had no idea that this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. Chapter 3: A Shadow in the Forest. Emma sat on the fallen tree, her breath still coming in uneven gasps. The adrenaline coursing through her veins was only now beginning to subside. She had just risked her life to save a grizzly cub, and somehow, she had walked away alive. The image of the mother bear disappearing into the trees replayed in her mind. That look in her eyes, it wasn't just relief or instinct, it was recognition. But Emma knew better than to linger. She needed to get out of here before the mother changed her mind. The sun was beginning to dip behind the trees as Emma made her way back to her campsite, her clothes still damp and clinging to her skin. Every step felt heavier than the last, her limbs weighed down by exhaustion. Her cabin was nearly an hour away, and she kept her rifle slung over her shoulder just in case. As she walked, she replayed the events in her head. Had she really just done that? Had she really dived into a freezing river for a wild animal? She shook her head. What choice did I have? The little cub had been drowning, and she had been the only one who could save it. About halfway back to the cabin, a strange feeling crept up her spine. Something was watching her. She stopped walking, her ears straining against the silence of the forest. The only sounds were the rustling of trees and the distant call of a bird. But the feeling wouldn't go away. Her fingers instinctively tightened around her rifle. She turned her head, scanning the dense trees behind her. Nothing. She took another step forward. Then she heard it, a soft rustling. Not the kind made by the wind. The kind made by something big. Her pulse spiked. She turned slowly, and her breath hitched in her throat. Through the trees, half hidden by the shadows, stood the mother grizzly. She wasn't growling. She wasn't charging. She was following her. Emma's heart pounded, but she forced herself to stay calm. Why was the bear following her? It didn't look aggressive. If anything, it looked curious. The mother bear stood still, watching. Emma took a slow step forward, testing the moment. The bear did nothing. Emma kept walking, her fingers gripping the strap of her rifle. Every few minutes, she glanced back, and every time, the bear was still there. A quiet, hulking shadow moving between the trees. Not too close, but not far either. By the time Emma reached her cabin, night was creeping into the sky, casting a deep blue glow over the land. She hesitated at the entrance, turning to face the forest. The bear had stopped at the tree line, her large form barely visible in the dim light. For a long moment, the two just stared at each other. Emma felt something stir inside her, something she couldn't quite explain. She wasn't just looking at a wild animal anymore, she was looking at a creature that seemed to understand her. And then, without a sound, the bear turned and disappeared into the darkness. Emma barely slept that night. She lay awake, listening to the wind, wondering if the bear was still out there, watching from the shadows. Why had it followed her? Had she unknowingly created a bond with this animal? Or was there something more? Emma didn't know it yet, but this wouldn't be the last time she saw the mother bear. And next time, things would be very different. The next morning, Emma stepped outside her cabin, her breath visible in the crisp mountain air. She hadn't slept much. The thought of the mother bear following her home had kept her awake, replaying over and over in her mind. Was it just coincidence? Or had she unknowingly forged some kind of connection with the animal? She shook her head. No, that was crazy. She had saved its cub, that was all. The bear had probably just been making sure its baby was safe. But then, why hadn't it left sooner? As Emma made her way down the forest path to gather firewood, she noticed something odd. The usual sounds of the forest were different. No birds. No rustling of small animals. Just silence. A cold feeling settled in her gut. Something wasn't right. She knelt by a patch of dirt, running her fingers over a fresh set of deep claw marks carved into a tree. Her heart pounded. These weren't from the mother bear. They were from something else. She straightened up, scanning the trees. That eerie feeling of being watched was back. But this time, it felt different. Darker. Emma quickened her pace back toward the cabin, her rifle slung over her shoulder. Then she heard it, a low, chilling snarl. She stopped dead in her tracks. Slowly, she turned her head, and her blood ran cold. A massive male grizzly stood just a few yards away. This wasn't the mother bear. This was a predator. Its fur was darker, its body twice the size, and its eyes weren't filled with recognition or understanding. They were filled with hunger. Emma's pulse spiked. Her fingers trembled as she reached for her rifle. But she knew the truth. She was too close. If she ran, it would chase. If she shot and missed, it would charge. And then, just when she thought she was out of options, a thunderous roar shook the trees. The mother bear exploded from the tree line like a force of nature, her massive form barreling toward the male. Emma barely had time to react before the two collided in a terrifying blur of fur, claws, and snarling fury. The ground trembled beneath their weight as they clashed, teeth snapping, paws swiping. Emma stumbled backward, gripping her rifle but frozen in shock. The mother bear was defending her. She wasn't just here by coincidence, she had been watching over Emma. And now, she was fighting for her. The fight was brutal. The male bear was stronger, but the mother bear was faster. She dodged his lunges, swiping at his face, landing blow after blow. The male reared back, roaring in frustration. His eye was bleeding. His stance was unsteady. And then, he made the choice. With one final snarl, the male turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush and disappearing into the depths of the forest. Silence fell. Emma's breath came in shallow gasps as she stared at the mother bear, who now stood panting, her massive chest rising and falling. She was injured, but still standing. Still strong. Their eyes met. And in that moment, Emma understood. This wasn't just an animal. This was a protector. A guardian. A silent force that had chosen to stand by her side. The mother bear let out a low, deep exhale before turning away. She limped slightly, but didn't stop, disappearing once again into the trees. Emma stood there frozen, her rifle still clutched in her shaking hands. She had just witnessed something incredible. This bear, this wild, untamed creature, had saved her life. But why? Had the moment at the river meant more than she realized? Had the bear truly recognized her as an ally? Emma didn't know the answer. But she knew one thing for certain, this wasn't the last time their paths would cross. And next time, she would be ready. The fire crackled softly in Emma's cabin, but she barely noticed. She sat at the table, staring at her trembling hands. The adrenaline was still fading, leaving behind a raw mix of shock, awe, and something she didn't quite understand. The mother bear had saved her. Emma had heard stories before of animals forming unlikely bonds with humans, of wolves sparing hunters, of dolphins protecting stranded swimmers, but never had she thought she would become part of one of those stories. Her mind replayed the fight in vivid detail, the way the mother bear had charged in without hesitation, the way she had stood between Emma and the male grizzly, the way she had looked at her afterward, as if confirming that she was safe. Emma had thought she had saved the bear's cub, but now she realized the bear had repaid the favor. Sleep didn't come easily that night. When dawn finally broke, Emma was already outside, hiking back toward the river. She needed to find her, the mother bear. She needed to understand why this was happening. As she moved through the trees, every sound made her ears perk up and every shadow made her heart jump. Had the male grizzly returned? Was the mother bear still out there? Then she saw them, near the riverbank, half hidden by the trees. The mother bear and her cub stood together. The cub, now more energetic, was nuzzling against its mother's side. But Emma's breath caught in her throat. The mother bear was limping. The fight had left deep wounds across her side. Blood matted her fur, staining the snow beneath her paws. Emma's chest tightened. She had been so focused on the miracle of what had happened that she hadn't considered the cost. The bear had saved her, but at what price? Emma knew she couldn't just walk away. This bear had protected her, had put itself in harm's way to keep her alive. And now it was injured. Could she really leave it like this? She took a slow step forward, her boots crunching softly in the snow. The bear lifted its head, sniffing the air. Emma's heart pounded. She knew this was insanity, but she took another step, then another, until she was just a few feet away. The mother bear didn't move, didn't growl, didn't back away. She let her come closer. Emma knelt down, her voice barely above a whisper. "You saved me," she said. "Let me help you." The mother bear exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the cold air. And for the first time, Emma saw something she never expected: trust. Emma moved carefully, pulling a small first aid kit from her pack. She knew she couldn't do much, not like a vet could, but she had some antiseptic, some bandages. Maybe it would be enough. She soaked a cloth in warm water from her flask and slowly reached out. The bear flinched but didn't pull away. Emma gently cleaned the wound, wiping away the dried blood. The bear let out a low rumbling sound, not a growl, but something softer, something almost grateful. She worked in silence, her hands steady, her breath slow. And for the first time, she and the bear weren't just two creatures who had crossed paths. They were something else, something more. When Emma finished, she stepped back, watching the bear closely. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then, slowly, the mother bear rose to her feet. She nudged her cub forward, casting one last look at Emma. Then, without a sound, she disappeared into the trees. Emma watched them go, her heart heavy yet full at the same time. She didn't know if she would ever see them again. But she knew one thing: she had saved the cub, the bear had saved her, and now she had saved her protector. Their debt was repaid. Or so she thought. Because this story wasn't over yet. Days passed, then weeks. Emma went about her usual routine, gathering firewood, fishing by the river, documenting the wilderness through her camera lens. But something had changed. The forest no longer felt the same. It wasn't just a place of solitude anymore. It was a place where something had happened, something that tied her to it in ways she never imagined. And though she tried to push it from her mind, she couldn't stop thinking about the bear. Was she healing? Was she safe? Would Emma ever see her again? She didn't know. Until one night, everything changed. The fire in Emma's cabin was burning low when she heard it, a deep, familiar sound. A rumbling huff just outside her cabin door. Her breath caught. No, it couldn't be. She grabbed her lantern, her fingers shaking as she pushed open the wooden door. And then her heart nearly stopped. She was back. The mother bear stood just a few feet away, her massive form barely visible against the moonlit snow. She wasn't alone. The cub was with her. Emma's throat tightened. She had spent weeks wondering if they were okay. And now, as if summoned by an invisible force, they had returned. But why? And then Emma saw it, a deep wound on the mother's leg. A wound that hadn't been there before. Emma's stomach twisted. The bear had been injured again. What had happened? Was it another predator? A hunter? Emma's hands clenched into fists. She didn't know why the bear had come back. But she knew one thing: she wasn't going to turn her away. Slowly, she stepped outside, her breath forming white clouds in the freezing air. The bear didn't move, didn't growl, didn't back away. She was waiting. Emma felt a lump in her throat. She came to me. She came here because she trusted her. And Emma wasn't about to betray that trust. With steady hands, Emma reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small bundle of medical supplies. She had prepared for this. Somehow, deep down, she had known. The bear lowered herself to the snow, watching as Emma carefully approached. Emma knelt beside her, her hands gentle as she inspected the wound. A bullet graze. Her stomach dropped. A hunter. Someone had tried to kill her. Fury ignited in Emma's chest, but she swallowed it down. She had to focus. She had to help her. The mother bear let out a slow exhale as Emma cleaned the wound, just like before. She worked in silence, the only sound between them the crackling of the fire inside the cabin. And all the while, the little cub watched her help its mother, watched her prove once again that she wasn't the enemy, that she was something else. Something no one would believe if they hadn't seen it with their own eyes. By the time Emma finished, the bear's breathing had evened out. She lifted her head, looking at Emma with those same deep, knowing eyes. Emma swallowed hard. She wanted to say something, to tell the bear to be careful, to beg her to stay safe. But no words came. Because no words were needed. After a moment, the mother bear rose slowly to her feet. She turned toward the forest, the cub following close behind. And just before she disappeared into the trees, she looked back one last time. Then she was gone. And Emma was left standing alone in the snow. Her heart full and her mind racing, she had saved a bear, and that bear had saved her again. But something deep inside Emma told her this wasn't the last time. Not yet. Not even close. Emma sat by the fire, her fingers curled around a warm mug of tea, but the heat did nothing to chase away the chill settling deep, deep in her chest. The bear had come back not once, but twice. And now, as she stared out at the darkened forest beyond her cabin, she knew with every fiber of her being, this wasn't just chance. There was something unspoken between them. Something neither of them fully understood. But tonight, as the embers flickered and the wind howled through the trees, Emma knew one thing with absolute certainty: the bear had come to her for help. And in doing so, she had given Emma something she hadn't realized she needed: purpose. The next morning, Emma rose early, her heart weighed down by thoughts she couldn't shake. A hunter. A human had hurt the bear. That changed everything. For weeks, she had assumed the wilderness was the only danger, that the male grizzly had been the greatest threat. But now she knew better. The real enemy had a rifle. And Emma had no idea if they were still out there. But she was going to find out. She packed her bag with supplies, water, food, her camera, and of course, her rifle. She wasn't a fool. If there was someone in these woods hunting illegally, she wasn't about to face them unarmed. As she stepped into the trees, a heavy silence pressed in around her. The snow had covered the tracks from the night before, but she knew where to start: the river, the last place she had seen the bear before the second injury. She moved quickly, her boots crunching against the ice-crusted ground. Her breath came out in short, visible bursts. Every step took her deeper into unknown territory. And then she found it. Emma stopped short. A spent bullet casing gleamed in the early morning light, half buried in the snow. Her stomach twisted as she bent down to pick it up. It was fresh. Someone had been here recently, and that meant they could still be nearby. She rose slowly, scanning the trees. Her grip tightened on her rifle. She wasn't just tracking a hunter anymore. She was being hunted. A click shattered the silence. Emma's body froze. The unmistakable sound of a rifle cocking. She turned her head slowly and felt her breath catch in her throat. A man stood just a few yards away, his rifle raised, his eyes cold and calculating. "Well, well," he murmured, tilting his head. "Didn't expect company out here." Emma's pulse pounded. She knew that look. This wasn't just a hunter. This was a poacher. And now she was standing between him and his target. "I saw the bear," Emma said carefully, keeping her voice steady. She was injured. "That was you, wasn't it?" The man chuckled, shaking his head. "Lady, I don't know what you think you're doing out here, but you're sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." Emma's fingers twitched toward her rifle, but she didn't lift it. She wasn't about to escalate this into something worse. "Poaching's illegal," she said. "If you shot that bear—" The man cut her off. "Listen, sweetheart," his voice turned hard, "a bear is just an animal. You know how much a grizzly hide sells for?" Emma's stomach twisted with disgust. This wasn't just a man with a gun. This was someone who killed for profit. And if he found the bear again, she wouldn't survive. Emma tightened her grip on her rifle. She had a choice. She could walk away, or she could stand her ground. She took a step forward. And then, a deep rumbling growl shook the air. The poacher stiffened. Emma's heart nearly stopped. Through the trees, a massive shadow moved. And then the mother bear stepped into view. Her fur bristled, her eyes burned with something primal, and she was looking right at the man with the rifle. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the bear charged. The poacher didn't hesitate. He turned and ran. Emma didn't move. Didn't breathe. The bear stopped just short of where the man had been standing. Her massive chest heaved, her ears flat against her skull. She watched him disappear into the forest, his rifle forgotten in the snow. Then she turned back to Emma. And Emma realized what had just happened. The bear had saved her. Again. The mother bear exhaled deeply, her massive form relaxing now that the danger had passed. Emma swallowed hard. This was it. This was the end of their story. The bear had protected her, just as she had protected the bear's cub. And now, it was time for both of them to return to their worlds. Emma took a slow step back, her heart heavy, but full. "Go on," she whispered. "You're free." The bear watched her, her dark eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, she turned. She padded back into the trees, her cub following close behind. And just before she vanished, she looked back one last time. A final moment. A silent farewell. Then she was gone. And Emma was left standing in the snow, her heart forever changed. She had saved a bear. The bear had saved her. And they would never forget each other. Emma returned to her cabin that night, feeling something she hadn't felt in a long, long time: peace. The world was still dangerous. But she had made a difference. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. She sat by the fire, staring out at the trees, wondering if the bear was still watching over her from somewhere out there. She smiled. She liked to think she was. And deep down, she knew, if their paths ever crossed again, it wouldn't be by accident. It would be destiny. If this story inspired you, remember, kindness and courage can change the world, even in the most unexpected ways. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and share this with someone who believes in the power of unlikely friendships. Let's keep telling stories that remind us of the beauty of the wild and the strength of the bonds we form along the way.